warrior King David was old, and the throne of Israel trembled with uncertainty. Rival sons and powerful men moved in the shadows, each seeking the crown. But from this storm of intrigue and blood, Solomon rose. The son of David who would secure the kingdom, face his enemies, and build the great temple of Yahweh. In this video, we will see the complete story of King Solomon. David was old and heavy with years, and warmth no longer clung to his body. Cloaks could not comfort him, and his servants sought a maiden to attend him in his weakness. They found Abishag of Shunem, fair in appearance and gentle in spirit. She ministered to the king, cared for him faithfully, yet he did not know her. But Adonijah, son of Haggith, lifted himself and said, "I will be king." He gathered for himself chariots, horsemen, and 50 men to run before him. Joab, captain of the army, and Abiathar the priest stood with him. Yet Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, and Solomon did not follow him. At the stone of Zoleth by En-Rogel, he prepared sacrifices and feasts for his brothers and the leaders of Judah. But Solomon was not invited. Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon. "Have you not heard that Adonijah has declared himself king, and David does not know it? Go to the king and remind him of the oath he swore, that Solomon shall reign after him. While you speak, I will enter and confirm your words." Bathsheba went to the chamber, bowed before the king, and said, "My lord, you swore by Yahweh your Elohim that Solomon my son would reign in your place, yet Adonijah now reigns, and you do not know it. All Israel looks to you to declare who shall sit upon the throne." As she spoke, Nathan entered and bowed before David. "My lord the king," he asked, "have you said, 'Adonijah shall reign after me'? For today he sacrifices oxen and sheep in abundance, and they cry, 'Long live King Adonijah.' Yet your servants, Zadok, Benaiah, Nathan, and Solomon were not called." Then David called Bathsheba again and swore, "As Yahweh lives, who has redeemed my soul from all distress, just as I swore to you by Yahweh Elohim of Israel, saying, 'Solomon shall reign after me and sit on my throne,' so I will do this day." Bathsheba bowed low and blessed the king. David commanded, "Call Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah son of Jehoiada. Take with you the servants of the king, set Solomon upon my mule, and bring him to Gibeon. There Zadok and Nathan shall anoint him king over Israel. Sound the trumpet and say, 'Long live King Solomon.' Then bring him to sit upon my throne." Benaiah answered, "Amen. May Yahweh Elohim be with Solomon as he was with David, and may his throne be greater than yours, my lord." So they went down, and Solomon rode upon the king's mule. At Gibeon, Zadok the priest took the horn of oil from the tent and anointed Solomon. The trumpet was blown, and all the people cried, "Long live King Solomon." With flutes and rejoicing they followed him, until the city shook with the sound. Adonijah and his guests heard the trumpet, and fear fell upon them. Jonathan, son of Abiathar, brought tidings, "Our Lord David has made Solomon king. He sits upon the throne, and the servants bless him, saying, 'May Yahweh Elohim make Solomon's throne greater than David's.'" When Adonijah's company heard this, they scattered in fear. Adonijah fled to the altar and took hold of its horns, saying, "Let King Solomon swear to me today that he will not put his servant to death." Solomon answered, "If he proves to be a worthy man, not a hair shall fall from him. But if evil is found in him, he shall die." They brought Adonijah down. He bowed before Solomon, and Solomon said, "Go to your house." David's days were drawing to their close. The one who had once stood as shepherd and warrior, singer and king, now summoned Solomon, his son and heir. The chamber was heavy with the stillness of farewell, yet his words bore the weight of eternity. "I go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man. Keep the charge of Yahweh your Elohim. Walk in his ways. Guard his statutes, his ordinances, his testimonies as written in the law of Moses. Do this, that you may act wisely in all that you do, and that Yahweh may establish his word, that there shall not fail a son of mine to sit upon the throne of Israel. His voice, though aged, turned sharp with memory. You know what Joab son of Zeruiah did, how he struck Abner and Amasa, spilling blood of peace as if in war. Act with wisdom, but do not let his gray hairs go down in peace to the grave. Yet remember the sons of Barzillai the Gileadite, who came near to me when I fled from Absalom. Show them kindness, let them eat at your table. And Shimei son of Gera, who cursed me at Bahurim, though I swore not to kill him, do not count him innocent. You are wise, you will know what must be done. So David lay with his fathers, entombed in the city that bore his name. 40 years he had reigned, 7 in Hebron, 33 in Jerusalem. And Solomon his son sat upon the throne, and his kingdom was firmly established. Before he rested, David gathered the leaders of Israel, the chiefs of tribes, the captains of armies, the priests and Levites, and all men of valor. Rising to his feet, he spoke, "It was in my heart to build a house for the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, for the footstool of our Elohim. Yet Elohim said, You shall not build it, for you are a man of war. But Yahweh Elohim of Israel chose me from among my father's house to be king, and from among my sons he chose Solomon to sit upon the throne. He said to me, Solomon your son shall build my house and my courts. I will be his father, and he shall be my son." In the sight of the assembly, David charged Solomon, "Know the Elohim of your fathers, serve him with a whole heart and a willing soul. For Yahweh searches all hearts and understands every thought. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will cast you off. Be strong and do the work, for Yahweh Elohim is with you." Then David placed in Solomon's hands the patterns of the house of Yahweh, the portico, the chambers, the treasuries, the vessels of gold and silver, the lampstands, the tables, the altars, even the chariot of cherubim with wings outstretched above the ark. "All this," he said, "was given me by the hand of Yahweh. Be steadfast, do not fear, for Yahweh Elohim, my Elohim, will not forsake you until all is finished." The king gave of his own treasure, gold of Ophir, silver refined, stones of beauty, and asked, "Who then will consecrate himself this day to Yahweh?" The chiefs of Israel gave willingly, and the people rejoiced with great joy. David also rejoiced and blessed Yahweh before all. "Yours, O Yahweh, are greatness and splendor, for all is yours. Riches and glory come from you, and we give only what comes from your hand." The people bowed and worshipped. They sacrificed abundantly and proclaimed Solomon king a second time, anointing him before Yahweh with Zadok as priest. Solomon sat on the throne of Yahweh as king in place of David his father, and all Israel gave him allegiance. Yahweh magnified Solomon and gave him royal splendor unlike any king before him. So David, son of Jesse, died in good old age, full of days, riches, and glory. His deeds were remembered in the records of Samuel the seer, Nathan the prophet, and Gad the visionary. And Solomon reigned in his stead, as the charge of the father passed to the son, and the promise of Yahweh Elohim held firm in Israel. Adonijah, son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba and bowed with courtesy. She asked him, "Do you come in peace?" And he answered, "In peace." His voice was measured, but his words revealed his heart. "You know that the kingship was mine, and all Israel set their faces toward me, yet it turned and became my brother's, for from Yahweh it came to him. Now I ask one request, speak to King Solomon, that he give me Abishag the Shunammite as wife." Bathsheba agreed to speak. When she came before Solomon, he rose to meet her, bowed, and set a throne for his mother at his right hand. "Ask, my mother," he said. She spoke, "Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to your brother Adonijah." Solomon's face hardened. "Why do you ask for Abishag for Adonijah? You might as well ask the kingdom for him. For he is my elder brother, and for Abiathar the priest, and for Joab son of Zeruiah also." Then Solomon swore by Yahweh, "As Yahweh lives, who has set me upon the throne of my father David, this word has cost Adonijah his life. Today he shall die." He sent Benaiah son of Jehoiada, who struck Adonijah down. To Abiathar the priest Solomon said, "Go to Anathoth, to your fields. You deserve death, but I will not kill you today, for you carried the ark of the Lord Yahweh before my father and shared in his afflictions." So Solomon removed Abiathar from the priesthood, fulfilling the word of Yahweh spoken concerning the house of Eli at Shiloh. News reached Joab, who had joined Adonijah, though not Absalom. He fled to the tent of Yahweh and took hold of the altar's horns. Solomon sent Benaiah, who commanded him to come out, but Joab refused. "Here I will die." Solomon replied, "Do as he says. Strike him down and bury him. That guilt for blood shed without cause may be lifted from me and from my father's house. Yahweh will return his blood upon his own head, for he killed Abner son of Ner and Amasa son of Jether, men more righteous than he." Benaiah struck Joab there, and he was buried in his own ground in the wilderness. Solomon placed Benaiah over the army and Zadok the priest in Abiathar's place. Then Solomon summoned Shimei son of Gera. "Build a house in Jerusalem," he said, "and dwell there. Do not cross the Kidron, for on the day you cross it you shall surely die. Your blood shall be on your own head." Shimei agreed, and for 3 years remained. But when 2 of his servants fled to Gath, Shimei saddled his donkey and went after them. On hearing this, Solomon summoned him. "Did I not warn you by Yahweh, saying, 'On the day you go forth, you shall surely die'? You agreed, saying, 'The word is good.' Why then did you not keep the oath of Yahweh? You know all the evil you did to my father David. Now Yahweh brings it back on your head." Solomon commanded Benaiah, who struck him down. Thus the throne was secured, justice was done, and the kingdom was firmly established under the hand of Solomon. Solomon strengthened his throne and bound himself in alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, taking Pharaoh's daughter into the city of David until his own house, the house of Yahweh, and the walls of Jerusalem were complete. Yet in those days the people still offered sacrifices at the high places, for no house had been built for the name of Yahweh. Solomon loved Yahweh, walking in the statutes of his father David, though he also sacrificed upon the high places. He went up to Gibeon, where the great high place stood, and where the tent of meeting made by Moses yet remained, with the copper altar fashioned by Bezalel before it. The Ark of the Covenant David had brought to Jerusalem, but here the altar remained. There Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings before Yahweh, and the assembly sought him with him. That night in Gibeon, Yahweh appeared to Solomon in a dream. Elohim said, "Ask what I shall give to you." Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant David my father, for he walked before you in faithfulness and uprightness of heart. You have kept for him this kindness, that a son now sits upon his throne, but I am but a young man, not knowing how to go out or come in. Your servant is in the midst of your chosen people, too numerous to count. Grant to your servant a listening heart to judge your people, to discern between good and evil, for who is able to govern this great people of yours?" The request pleased Yahweh. Elohim said to him, "Because you have asked this, and not long life, nor riches, nor the life of your enemies, I give you wisdom and understanding such as none before you has had, and none after you shall have. Moreover, I will give you what you did not ask, riches and honor, so that among kings none shall be like you all your days. And if you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes as David your father did, I will prolong your days." When Solomon awoke, he knew it was a dream, yet the word was sure. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. Then he made a feast for all his servants. Josephus remembered this moment, saying that Solomon's request showed a mind humble and pure, that he sought not treasures for himself but wisdom for his people. For this reason, Elohim granted him all things, understanding above men, but also glory and abundance beyond kings. And in the wisdom of Solomon it is said, I prayed, and understanding was given to me. I called, and the spirit of wisdom came to me. I preferred her to scepters and thrones, and considered riches nothing in comparison with her. Thus, the dream at Gibeon became the foundation of Solomon's reign, the gift of wisdom joined with honor and wealth, and the promise of life if he kept the way of Yahweh. 2 women were brought before Solomon. They were prostitutes dwelling together under one roof, and no witness stood with them but themselves. The first spoke, My lord, I gave birth while she was in the house. On the 3rd day after, she also gave birth. There was no one with us. In the night, her child died when she lay upon him. She arose in the night and took my son from beside me while I slept. She placed her dead son in my bosom, and when I awoke to nurse my child, I found him dead. But when I looked closely, behold, he was not the son I had borne. The other woman answered, Not so. My son is the living one, and your son is the dead one. And the first declared again, No, your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one. Thus they argued, each against the other, before the king. Then Solomon said, This one says, My son is the living one, and your son is the dead one. While that one says, No, your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one. Bring me a sword. A sword was brought before the king. Solomon said, Divide the living child in 2, and give half to the one and half to the other. At once the mother whose son was alive cried out, her heart burning with compassion, O my lord, give her the living boy, do not put him to death. But the other said, Let him be neither mine nor yours, divide him. Then Solomon answered, Give the living child to her, and by no means put him to death. She is his mother. When all Israel heard of the judgment the king had made, they stood in awe, for they saw that the wisdom of Elohim was within him to do justice. Josephus wrote that the people marveled, saying that a wisdom beyond man's was present in him, and that even in so small a matter, he had shown a spirit able to pierce through deceit and discern truth. Thus, Solomon's wisdom was revealed before the nation, and his fame began to spread. For the people recognized that Elohim had granted him understanding to judge his people rightly. Solomon ruled over all Israel, and order was set in the kingdom. Around him stood the officers of state, priests, scribes, commanders, household stewards, and deputies who governed the land. 12 overseers provided each month for the king's table, and their names and regions stretched across Ephraim, Naphtali, Issachar, Benjamin, Asher, and Gilead. Nothing was lacking. Judah and Israel were as many as the sand on the shore. They ate, they drank, and they rejoiced. Solomon's reign stretched from the Euphrates to Egypt, and the kings of these lands brought tribute and served him all his life. His daily provision was vast, flour and meal, oxen and sheep, wild deer and fowl in abundance. Peace was on every side, and each man sat beneath his vine and fig tree from Dan to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. The king gathered wealth and strength. He had thousands of horses for chariots, 12,000 horsemen, and merchants who brought steeds from Egypt and distant lands. Silver in Jerusalem became as common as stones, and cedars were like the sycamores in the low hills. The royal house prospered, and the land prospered with it. Yet the crown of his reign was not riches, but wisdom. Elohim gave Solomon understanding like the sands of the sea. His wisdom exceeded that of the sons of the east and the sages of Egypt. He was wiser than Ethan the Ezrahite, and than Heman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol. His name was known among the nations, and men came to hear him. He spoke 3,000 proverbs and composed songs beyond number. His words traced the cedars of Lebanon and the hyssop from the wall. He spoke of beasts, of birds, of creeping things, and of fish. His tongue described the order of creation, and kings sent their envoys to learn from him. For wisdom is a breath of the power of Elohim, a pure radiance of his glory, a light that cannot be quenched. She enters holy souls and makes them friends of God and prophets, so the kingdom flourished in glory. Peace filled the borders, abundance filled the houses, and wisdom filled the court of the king. In Solomon's days, prosperity and discernment were joined together, and Israel rejoiced beneath the blessing of Yahweh. When Solomon was established in peace, he resolved to build a house for the name of Yahweh. His father David had long desired this, yet wars surrounded him until Yahweh placed his enemies beneath his feet. But now rest was given to Solomon, and there was no adversary to disturb him. Hiram, king of Tyre, who had loved David, sent envoys when he heard Solomon had taken the throne. Solomon sent back word, "You know, David, my father could not build a house for the name of Yahweh his Elohim, because of the wars that pressed on every side. But now Yahweh my Elohim has given me rest. Behold, I will build a house for his name, as he promised to David, saying, 'Your son who shall reign after you will build the house for my name. Send me cedars from Lebanon, for no one among us is skilled to cut timber as the Sidonians.'" When Hiram heard, he rejoiced. "Blessed be Yahweh today, who has given David a wise son over this great people." He agreed to provide cedar and cypress, cut by his servants and floated on rafts across the sea to the place Solomon appointed. In return, Solomon gave him yearly provisions of wheat, oil, and wine in abundance. So peace and covenant were set between them. Solomon raised a vast labor force, 70,000 burden bearers, 80,000 stonecutters in the hill country, and thousands of overseers. In shifts they labored, cutting costly stones, great and well-dressed, for the foundation. His builders and Hiram's builders worked together, preparing timbers and stones until all was ready. In the 480th year after Israel came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign, in the month of Ziv, he began to build. On Mount Moriah, where Yahweh had appeared to David, on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite, the foundation was laid. The house was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, 30 high. The vestibule stretched across the front, and windows were set with frames above. Around the outside, chambers were built in rising stories. Stones were prepared in the quarry, so that no sound of hammer or iron tool was heard at the site while the house was built. The inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, was lined with cedar, overlaid with gold, and measured 20 cubits in length, breadth, and height, a perfect cube. There he prepared a place for the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh. 2 cherubim of olive wood stood within, each 10 cubits high. Their wings spread so that one touched the wall, and the other met its partner in the center. All was overlaid with gold. Upon the walls were carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, all gleaming with hammered gold. The doors of the sanctuary were of olive wood, carved with cherubim and palms, overlaid with gold pressed into the engravings. The outer doors were of fir, also carved and covered with gold. The floor itself was sheathed in gold, curtains of blue, purple, crimson, and fine linen, embroidered with cherubim, hung before the holy place. In the forecourt he raised 2 great pillars of bronze, each 35 cubits high with capitals 5 cubits, adorned with nets of lattice and rows of pomegranates. He set them at the entrance. The right he named Yakin, he establishes, and the left Boaz. In him is strength. 7 years the work continued, and in the month of Bul, the 8th month, the house was finished in all its parts and according to every detail. It shone with cedar and gold, with carvings and precious stones. It was built for incense, for the bread of the presence, for offerings at morning and evening, for Sabbaths and appointed feasts. And yet Solomon confessed, "The heavens, even the highest heavens, cannot contain you. How much less this house that I build? But it is raised, that your name may dwell here." Thus the house for the name of Yahweh rose in Jerusalem, not as the dwelling of men, but as the sanctuary of the living God, whose glory fills heaven and earth. The time arrived when all the work of the house was complete. Solomon, the son of David, gathered together the elders of Israel, the chiefs of the tribes, and the heads of the fathers' houses. They came up to Jerusalem to bring the ark of the covenant of Yahweh from the city of David, from Zion. The festival was in the 7th month, in Ethanim, when the men of Israel converged in multitudes. The priests and the Levites bore the ark, together with the tent of appointment and all the sacred vessels consecrated by Moses. Before them stood Solomon and the congregation, offering sacrifices of oxen and sheep, so many they could not be numbered. The ark was carried into its resting place, into the innermost sanctuary of the house, beneath the wings of the cherubim. The golden wings stretched wide, overshadowing the ark and its poles. Within it lay nothing except the tablets of stone given to Moses at Horeb, when Yahweh made covenant with Israel after leading them from Egypt. As the priests came out from the holy place, the cloud descended, the cloud of the presence. The house of Yahweh was filled with glory, so that the priests could not remain to minister. Awe seized the people, for the splendor of Yahweh filled the sanctuary. Solomon lifted his voice. "Yahweh has said he would dwell in thick darkness, yet I have built a house for your name, a dwelling for the ages." Then turning to the assembly, he blessed them, recalling how the promise given to David his father was now fulfilled. For the son of David had built the house for the name of Yahweh Elohim of Israel. Before the altar, Solomon spread out his hands toward heaven. From the great bronze platform he knelt, lifting his voice in a prayer that rose like incense. He praised Yahweh, who keeps covenant and mercy with those who walk before him wholeheartedly. He confessed the greatness of the one whom even the heavens of heavens cannot contain, yet whose eyes would rest upon this house, to hear prayers spoken within it or toward it. He interceded for Israel, for the sinner under oath, for the nation defeated in battle, for the heavens closed in drought, for the land struck with famine or pestilence, for the stranger who would come from afar because of the name of Yahweh, for the people taken captive in exile who would turn back with repentance. In each case, Solomon pleaded, "Hear from heaven your dwelling place, hear and forgive." The assembly stood silent as the king's words poured forth, words both exalted and intimate. When Solomon had ended, fire fell from heaven. It consumed the sacrifices upon the altar, and again the glory of Yahweh filled the house. The people fell on their faces, worshiping, crying out, "For he is good, for his mercy endures forever." The dedication continued with offerings beyond measure, 22,000 oxen, 120,000 sheep. The great altar was too small, so the king sanctified the middle court for the sacrifices of peace. For 7 days the feast endured, from Lebo Hamath to the Wadi of Egypt, Israel rejoicing with glad hearts before Yahweh. On the 8th day Solomon dismissed the people, who returned to their tents joyful for the goodness shown to David, to Solomon, and to Israel. That night Yahweh appeared to Solomon, saying, "I have heard your prayer and have chosen this house as my dwelling, a house of sacrifice. If I shut up the heavens that there is no rain, if I command the locust to devour, or if I send pestilence among my people, If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their evil ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land. My eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually. Thus the covenant was renewed, the house consecrated, and the throne of David confirmed, with promise of blessing for faithfulness, but with warning of ruin should Israel turn aside to other Elohim. When the house of Yahweh and the palace of Solomon stood complete, when every chamber and court had been made according to desire, the Lord appeared to Solomon a second time, as once he had appeared in Gibeon. The voice of Yahweh came to him, saying, I have heard your prayer and your supplication. I have sanctified this house that you have built, placing my name there forever. My eyes and my heart shall be there all the days. And as for you, if you will walk before me as David your father walked, with integrity of heart and uprightness, keeping my statutes and my judgments, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom over Israel forever, as I promised David your father, saying, There shall never fail you a man upon the throne of Israel. But if you or your sons turn aside, if you forsake my commandments and go to serve other gods and bow before them, then I will cut Israel off from the land which I gave them. This house, which I have hallowed for my name, I will cast out of my sight. It shall become a proverb and a byword among all nations. This house shall lie desolate. Every passerby shall be astonished and shall hiss, saying, Why has Yahweh done this to this land and to this house? And they shall answer, Because they forsook Yahweh their God, who brought their fathers out of Egypt and laid hold of other gods, bowing to them and serving them. Therefore he has brought all this evil upon them. So the word of the Lord came as both a promise and a warning. Life and security in obedience, ruin and exile in betrayal. At the end of 20 years, when both the house of Yahweh and the palace of the king were finished, Solomon extended his hand in alliances. Hiram of Tyre had supplied him with cedar, fir, and gold in abundance. In return, Solomon gave him 20 cities in the land of Galilee. But when Hiram came to view them, he found them poor and unimpressive, and called the region Kabul, a name of reproach that endured. Yet the bond of friendship remained, for Hiram had already sent 120 talents of gold. Solomon's work stretched across the land. He strengthened the Millo and the wall of Jerusalem. He fortified Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer, the city that Pharaoh of Egypt had taken by fire, slaying the Canaanite inhabitants and giving it as dowry to his daughter, the wife of Solomon. He rebuilt Lower Beth-horon and Baalath, and raised Tadmor in the wilderness, making provision cities and chariot cities, places for horsemen and for the wealth of his kingdom. All the remnant peoples of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites who had not been destroyed, he set under tribute, making them bearers of burdens and hewers of stone. But of the sons of Israel he made none conscripted, for they were the men of war, the officers, the captains, and the commanders of his chariots. Over the work, Solomon set 550 officers, ruling the laborers and guiding the projects. In time, Solomon brought Pharaoh's daughter up from the city of David to her own house, saying, She shall not dwell in the places hallowed by the ark of Yahweh. Thus he finished the bulwark of the Millo. 3 times a year Solomon ascended to the altar, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths. There he offered burnt offerings and peace offerings and incense before Yahweh, completing the worship of the house. Nor was his power bound to the land alone. At Ezion-Geber, on the shore of the Red Sea, Solomon built a fleet of ships. Hiram sent with them seasoned sailors who knew the sea. Together with Solomon's men they sailed to Ophir, and from there they brought back gold, 420 talents, which they laid before the king. Thus the covenant was renewed with both light and shadow. glory secured by faithfulness, but ruin warned against should the heart turn to idols. And Solomon's dominion spread from land to sea, building, trading, and ruling in days of wealth and might. Far to the south, across deserts and trade routes, word of Solomon's fame spread like fire carried by the caravans. Merchants, envoys, and sailors all spoke of the king who ruled in Jerusalem, whose wisdom surpassed the sages of the earth, whose house was filled with abundance, and whose God was said to dwell in a house of gold. Among those who heard was a queen of Sheba, a sovereign in her own right, famed for her wealth, her dominion over spice-bearing lands, and her mastery of riddles and enigmas. Determined to test the truth of what she had heard, she prepared a caravan unlike any that had entered Jerusalem before. Camels bore loads of gold. Precious stones gleamed in baskets, and the air itself was perfumed by aromatics rare and costly, the treasures of her kingdom. With a vast retinue of servants and guards, she made her journey north, until at last she entered the city of the king. When she stood before Solomon, she spoke freely all that was on her heart. Questions hidden in parables, riddles meant to perplex, matters deep and obscure. Yet nothing was concealed from him. With calm clarity he unraveled every enigma, discerning her words and her intent, speaking as one to whom wisdom had been given without measure. The queen beheld not only his answers but his works. The house that he had built for Yahweh, the food upon his table, the ordering of his officials, the garments of those who served him, the cupbearers with their vessels, and the ascent by which he went up to the house of the Lord with sacrifice. It was more than the mind could contain. Her spirit failed within her, for the half of his greatness had not been told. She said to him, "True was the report I heard in my land of your words and of your wisdom. Yet I did not believe until my eyes had seen. Behold, the greatness surpasses the telling. Happy are your servants who stand always before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be Yahweh your Elohim, who delights in you to set you on the throne of Israel. Because of his love for Israel to establish it forever, he has made you king to do judgment and justice." Then she gave to Solomon her gifts: 120 talents of gold, spices in abundance, such as never again entered the land, and precious stones beyond count. And Solomon, for his part, gave to her all she desired and asked for, over and above what he gave from his own bounty. No guest departed from his court empty-handed, least of all a queen whose heart had been moved to reverence. It was said that from Ophir, the fleets brought not only gold, but almug wood in great quantity, fashioned into inlay for the house of Yahweh and for the palace, and into harps and lyres for the singers. So splendid was this wood, that never had the land seen its like before. The same ships carried precious stones, making Jerusalem a treasury without rival. When her visit was complete, the Queen of Sheba returned to her own land with her retinue, carrying not only gifts, but the memory of wonders, bearing testimony to her people of the wisdom that was granted to Solomon, a wisdom that none of the kings of the earth could equal. In the later years of Solomon's reign, when his hair had grown silvered and his heart should have been firmly anchored in the covenant, the king's affections drifted. He had taken wives from many nations, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite, though Yahweh had warned Israel not to mingle in such unions, lest their hearts be turned after other gods. Yet Solomon clung to them in love. 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines filled his courts, and their voices filled his ears. As age pressed upon him, the king's heart began to tilt, bending under the weight of these alliances. No longer was he whole with Yahweh his Elohim, as his father David had been. His steps faltered, and he turned aside to the worship of Ashtoreth, goddess of the Sidonians, and to Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Upon the high places near Jerusalem he built shrines, one for Chemosh of Moab and another for Moloch of Ammon. and to each of the foreign gods beloved by his wives he raised altars, where incense was burned and sacrifices offered. Thus the king who had built the house for the name of Yahweh now built houses for idols. The smoke of strange sacrifices rose beside the smoke of the covenant altar, and the city chosen for Yahweh's name became a mingling of holy and profane. Yahweh, who had appeared twice to Solomon with promise and covenant, was angered. He spoke, "Because this has occurred with you, because you have not kept my covenant nor my statutes, I shall surely tear the kingdom from your hand and give it to your servant. Yet for the sake of David, I will not do it in your days, but in the days of your son. Still, I will not tear away all the kingdom, but one tribe shall remain, for David my servant's sake and for Jerusalem which I have chosen." From that moment adversaries rose against Solomon. Hadad the Edomite, who as a child had escaped the slaughter in Edom and grown to manhood in Pharaoh's house, returned with bitterness to vex Israel. Rezon son of Eliada, once a servant of Hadadezer, gathered men and seized Damascus, reigning over Syria and harassing the borders of Israel. And among Solomon's own officials was Jeroboam son of Nebat, an Ephraimite, skilled in labor and strong in spirit. Seeing his capability, Solomon had set him over the work of Joseph. But one day, as Jeroboam went out from Jerusalem, the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite met him in the field, clothed in new raiment. Taking the garment, Ahijah tore it into 12 pieces and said, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for thus says Yahweh, Behold, I will tear the kingdom from Solomon and give you 10 tribes. One tribe shall remain for the sake of David and for Jerusalem. If you walk in my ways as David did, I will build you a sure house, as I built for him." When Solomon heard of this, he sought to put Jeroboam to death, but the man fled into Egypt to Shishak the king and remained there until Solomon's end. So the days of his reign drew to a close, 40 years in Jerusalem. The king who had been visited by Yahweh, who had prayed for wisdom and received it, who had built the temple and seen it filled with glory, lay down with his fathers. Yet he left behind not only the memory of splendor, but also the shadow of betrayal, a kingdom fractured by the turning of his heart. He was buried in the city of David, and his son Rehoboam reigned in his stead. When Solomon died after 40 years of rule, his son Rehoboam journeyed to Shechem, for all Israel had assembled there to proclaim him king. Yet waiting in the wings was Jeroboam son of Nebat, who had fled to Egypt during Solomon's days but had now returned. The people sent for him, and together he and the assembly approached Rehoboam. They spoke plainly, "Your father laid on us a harsh yoke of labor. Lighten it now, ease the heavy service, and we will serve you." Rehoboam, uncertain, dismissed them for 3 days to consider. He turned first to the elders who had served his father. Their counsel was wise and seasoned. "If you show yourself a servant to this people today, if you speak kindly and ease their burden, they will serve you all their days." But Rehoboam rejected their counsel. He turned instead to the young men who had grown up with him, companions of his youth. They urged arrogance. "Say this to them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father chastised you with whips. I will chastise you with scorpions." On the 3rd day, Jeroboam and the people returned. Rehoboam answered them harshly, forsaking the elders' wisdom. He repeated the words of the young men, adding weight to their yoke instead of lifting it. Thus the matter was from Yahweh, fulfilling the words spoken long before by Ahijah the prophet. When Israel heard this obstinate reply, their cry rose sharp and bitter. "What portion have we in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now David, see to your own house." From that day, Israel turned away from the house of David, leaving Rehoboam king only over Judah and Benjamin. Still, Rehoboam sought to press his claim. He sent Adoram, who was over the forced labor, but the people stoned him to death. Alarmed, the king fled in haste to Jerusalem. Soon after, all Israel proclaimed Jeroboam king over them. The house of David was left with but one tribe, in fulfillment of the word Yahweh had spoken for David's sake and for Jerusalem's. Rehoboam gathered 180,000 chosen men of Judah and Benjamin to fight and restore the kingdom. Yet the prophet Shimei brought the word of Yahweh, "You shall not go up nor fight against your brothers, the sons of Israel. Return each man to his house, for this thing is from me." The armies obeyed and dispersed. Rehoboam remained in Jerusalem, fortifying cities throughout Judah and Benjamin, garrisoning them with shields, spears, and supplies. Priests and Levites from across Israel, cast out by Jeroboam, who had raised false priests for his calves and high places, came instead to Jerusalem, strengthening Judah. For 3 years they upheld the ways of David and Solomon, and the kingdom was steady. Yet even in Judah the seeds of decline were planted. Rehoboam took many wives, among them Mahalath and later Maacah, daughter of Absalom, whom he loved above all others. From her came Abijah, whom he appointed as chief among his sons, to be made king. He dealt shrewdly, scattering his sons in fortified towns with provisions in abundance and wives aplenty. Thus the kingdom of David was fractured, 10 tribes under Jeroboam in the north, 2 tribes with Rehoboam in Jerusalem. The glory of the united reign faded, and what Solomon's wisdom had built was broken by folly and pride. The shadow of division lengthened, and Israel's decline had begun. In the days when Solomon purposed to raise the house of Yahweh, he prayed for wisdom not only to govern the people, but to master the hidden forces that oppose the work. For in the night watches he discerned that spirits, restless, rebellious powers from the abyss, rose up against the builders, afflicting the craftsmen, weakening their hands, and stirring fear in the camp. Then it was that Michael, prince among the archangels, appeared to Solomon in brightness like the dawn, bearing in his hand a ring. On it gleamed the seal of the living God, the name graven in mystery, shining with fire. And Michael said, "Take this, O king. With it you shall rule not only over men, but also over the spirits that trouble the earth. Command them, and they will serve the work of the temple. For it is not by your strength, but by the name that they shall be subdued." Solomon took the ring, and when he raised it, the spirits trembled. He summoned them, one by one, and they came in fear. Some were forms of shadow, some like beasts, some like winds and fires. They confessed their names, their dwellings, their works of harm upon mankind. How they deceived, how they struck with disease, how they stirred lust or violence, how they eclipsed light or fouled the waters. Solomon questioned them, discerning their nature, and bound each by oath in the name sealed upon the ring. Thus compelled, the spirits became laborers for the temple. Some cut great stones in the mountains, others carried timbers, others raised the walls. Still others labored in hidden ways, clearing the air of corruption so that the place might be pure. And Solomon, seated in wisdom, directed both the hands of men and the invisible hosts, until the house of Yahweh rose in glory beyond all telling. Yet not only in building did the ring serve him. By it Solomon learned the deep order of creation, the courses of the stars, the secrets of herbs, the ways of healing. He conversed with angels and tested the powers that lurked beneath the earth and sea. He set the spirits in chains, but also compelled them to reveal their opposites, the remedies, the songs, the prayers by which humankind might withstand their snares. So the fame of Solomon grew not only among nations, but in the hidden world also. For kings marveled at his wisdom, and spirits feared the seal of his ring. And though men remembered the cedar and the gold, the feasts and the judgments, yet in whispered legend they told also of the ring of power, the gift of Michael, by which Solomon bent the unseen to serve the glory of God's house. This narrative was built by following the biblical texts, such as the books of Kings and Chronicles, using a faithful translation into English. I also used extra materials and non-canonical books to enrich the story. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave a comment and share it with others who might be interested in the topic. See you in the next video.